Audio primes are podcast consumers who listen to at least 75% of their content as audio. This is newly released data from Sounds Profitable, which is both fascinating and at times surprising. On this episode, we'll take a wee peek under the hood to learn more about the demographics, tastes and habits of these audio primes, as well as what this means for you and I as indie creators. And who better to act as our guide and sage than the report's author, Tom Webster. Here he is.
What we did in our most recent kind of study of media audiences called the podcast landscape is we asked people who were consumers of podcasts what percentage of the podcasts that they consume are, consumed through video or consumed through audio. And that kind of runs a spectrum. And when we refer to audio primes, we're referring to podcast consumers who tell us that they listen to 75% or more of their podcasts. And there are of course, the opposite, their opposites, which are the video primes, who watch 75% or more of their podcasts. In practice, the number of kind of video onlys, the percentage of people who say they absolutely never listen to anything, but only watch podcasts is about, 8%. And that's held true over three studies that we've done. So I feel pretty good about that number. But the audio prime, the people who listen to 3/4 or more of their content, that's about 22% of podcast consumers overall. So it's a really healthy subset of people who are not just podcast listeners, but they're clearly intentional about that enough to know that that's what they mostly do.
So what, I guess, surprised you about this data? Because I dare say you couldn't wait to get your hands on it and start tearing into it. So any big surprises for you? I'm rarely surprised by data, and that's not because I'm like the all-knowing wizard. I'm rarely surprised by data because I see so much of it and things sort of happen slowly in trends. That said, I was surprised by this data. And I think that, it starts from a demographic level. I think my poor assumption, and I should know better, was that the audio prime was, like me, 55 plus, gray beard, discovered podcast back in 2006 from Apple iTunes at the time. And we're just sort of wedded to our iPods that it was sort of a legacy segment, and nothing could be further from the truth. It's actually a younger, sort of more active across all media kind of segment. That was absolutely the core surprise for me, and that fed into all the delightful discoveries after that. The listening that was taking place, I guess we might assume then that these listeners are listening on listening platforms. I'll see how many times I could say listening here, but YouTube, we can't ignore YouTube. It seemed to be pretty prominent and what people were using to access their podcasts.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's another myth to dispel. Whether you're an audio prime or a video prime, right? Both ends of that spectrum, YouTube is the dominant consumption vehicle. And we make a mistake when we conflate video with YouTube. And yes, YouTube is a platform that serves video, but at its heart, from a podcasting point of view, YouTube is an excellent podcast app. It's very easy to find things. You don't even need an account to use YouTube to find things, right? You can just tell somebody, hey, find my show on YouTube. It is an excellent recommendation engine. It is an excellent community engine. It's a great way to actually have some engagement with both fellow fans and also the people behind the show itself. So it's a really, really good app. And I think the real eye opener here that people need to get their head around is that YouTube does not mean watching. And with the audio prime segment, YouTube is just the door, right? It is the door. And then once an audio prime walks through it, then the phone goes in their pocket. The tab gets minimized. Another app that they're working on, comes to the foreground. They're using it as the conduit, but it's not the active means of consumption.
I noticed in the report that almost half of audio primes just seem to follow one or two shows. But also I noticed that 32% started listening to a new show in the last month. So at first I was thinking, like, is this an audience that's going to be very hard to crack if I'm starting a new podcast? But on the other hand, it does seem that these listeners are receptive to trying out new content as well.
That's exactly right. They are receptive to new content. They are finding new shows. And, the way I think to get your head around all of this data that makes the most sense to me, first of all, the audio prime is not an audio only. And you've noticed that yourself in the data, Matthew, obviously. They are, in fact, a voracious consumer of everything. They index higher for video. They index higher for audio. They are consuming multiple platforms, multiple channels, and they over-index on all of those things. And what they're telling us is that, they're watching plenty of other things that they wouldn't consider podcasts. They're watching plenty of other YouTube videos and clips and shorts and TikToks and things like that. What they carve out specifically in their mind as a podcast is an intentional thing. And it's not that everything is a podcast to them. It's that, I watch this show and I watch that show. But there are a couple shows that, to me, are the things that I listen to. And I might listen to them while I'm doing something else, but I'm intentionally listening to them. Those are my podcasts. And they may have fewer of them in their consideration set, but that's because their overall consideration set is massive with other types of media. So it is harder maybe to break into that consumer shelf. It is impossible to break into that consumer shelf if you don't have a YouTube strategy, I think. And that doesn't mean that you need to put your podcast on YouTube. They don't always work that way. It might be that your podcast does not particularly suit YouTube. And if you just put your audio up with like a still photo, it's not going to do well. It's absolutely not going to do well on YouTube. It's not going to be found. The door is not going to be attractive enough for people to open. But if you do have some kind of a YouTube strategy to at least get the podcaster up there, then they can find it, then they can open the door, and then you can potentially become that next new show for them.
What might that strategy look like then?
Well, I do think it involves clips and reels, and I think the last 12 months to me, in terms of public trends, if I had to sum up two or three of the most important ones, the clips would be one of the first I would name. And I think we saw that. This wasn't sort of my first glimpse of it, but the impact of it was back when Taylor Swift announced her new album on the New Heights podcast with her fiance, Travis Kelce. And I think the buildup for that show was so intense that a lot of people, myself included, thought that would be like the biggest podcast download of all time, right? And it was not. It was not even close. And the reason for that is that they chopped it up so much into clips and shorts and just carpet bombed reels and carpet bombed TikTok that their strategy was not, let's grow Travis's podcast. It was, let's get this message out to everyone. And that was an incredibly successful thing, right? And clips were the driver behind that. And I think a lot of people assume that, well, why would anybody listen to my show if I carve it up into clips? They might not, but if you don't, they never will. And it may be that clips are an on-ramp to a deeper engagement for some people. It may be that some people will only go as far as the clip and never go to your show. But in both of those cases, they have been exposed to your content. So it's a false choice, I think, to think about one or the other. But clips have been right now, I think, such a dominant driver for discovery. And that can happen on YouTube, but that can also happen on Instagram and TikTok. So finding a way, if it isn't clips of your show, then it's something short that shows your quality, so that if people are interested in a deeper engagement with you, which often happens on YouTube, then they'll go to your show. And if they don't, they don't. But look, hey, at least you had a shot.
I guess it seemed that host recommendations were really powerful here. So for anyone listening who really doesn't, for any particular reason, want to go down the video route, doesn't want to go down the clips route, I guess collaborating with other podcasters would be a good option for them, and just maybe getting on other shows, doing a bit of swapping here and there.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in that. I'm a huge believer in making, trying to make arrangements with as many shows as you can to help each other out. And the other thing I'm a huge believer in is actually collaborating with shows that have a similar point of view, similar way of looking at the world. Might be the same topic, might not be the same topic, but maybe share an audience, and collaborating on a single feed. I think if you can build a feed with your show and some other like-minded shows, and brand that feed as something, congratulations, you've just made a network, and B, you have improved your chances at getting people to make your show a habit. Right now, if you think about how you watch streaming television, you have a natural destination service. You open up Netflix, you open up HBO Max. There's a handful of them. It's not overwhelming, and you have an on ramp into what it is that you do, and you're probably going to find something there. Yeah, I know some people might scan through Netflix for 10 minutes and not watch anything, but you're probably going to find something there, right? And podcasting doesn't really have that. But if you can collaborate on a single destination that serves a particular audience, a particular segment, and you can start to brand that, then people will trust that. And they'll say, you know what, I have some space in my life right now to listen to something. I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to get in the car. What's the first place I'm going to go? And we need to work on collaborative, easy on-ramps so that people have a destination they automatically think of. And that's the kind of work that independent podcasters don't do enough of, and I think could do a significant amount to improve their lot in life, Matthew.
So that could look like then me starting a new feed, the tabletop miniature show feed, and just getting in touch with other podcasters that do the same thing as me, and selling the benefits to them. If we could all mention this feed on our shows now and then, it's going to help with the kind of audience share and improve everyone's lot. I guess that's the kind of theory there.
Yeah, and look, let's go into your specific example, Matthew, because I'm going to geek out with you for a minute, right? If you are a tabletop miniatures fan, right, you spend 10% of your tabletop miniatures life playing the game, whatever it is, 30% painting the miniatures, and 60% complaining that you don't have enough time to paint the miniatures. Right. But, if someone sets aside an hour a night to paint miniatures, wouldn't it be cool if there was always something for them to listen to while they're doing that? Something that was branded. This is, and actually put in that context. Hey, you want to paint? Come paint with us. We're going to chat. We're going to talk. We're going to talk about the latest trends. We're going to talk about new releases. Why not grab your paints, grab your minis, and let's do a little work and listen. And if you have a like-minded coalition of shows, there's going to be something in that feed every hour, at least an hour a night for people to do that. And that all of a sudden becomes a container that people can put your show and like-minded shows into that fits their life. Maybe that container is a pleasurable way to actually paint more and get their minis on the table and enjoy the hobby more, right? Now, I've just gone really deep with you on that, but that's exactly the kind of who is your audience when they're at home? How does my show fit into their life? How can I improve that? That's the kind of thinking you have to get into.
Yeah, that's great advice. Great advice. And I love your not so subtle knowledge of the tabletop hobby. You've definitely got an army or two on a shelf somewhere.
Unpainted, I assure you. Yeah.
Haven't we all?
Just resin and metal, laying, pieces on sprues and whatever. It is a tale of woe, Matthew. Yeah.
Well, once I get that feed set up, you'll be golden. You talked about deliberate habits, and I like how, we're seeing this stat that 84% prefer ongoing series. So they like this habitual listening. I just wanted to clarify, by ongoing series, can that mean a different topic every week within your overall topic, or are we talking like a narrative, almost like a story here?
I think what we're talking about is just not a limited series, but something that reliably puts out a new show at a reliable cadence. And I think that's something to think about when you're an independent creator is what's a reliable cadence that you can maintain? And how can you keep your feed warm when you can't be the one providing that content? And that's really what I'm talking about here is if someone can't rely that that content is going to be there new when they expect it to be, then they develop another habit. You know what I mean? They look for something else that will, because if you are someone who likes to paint tabletop miniatures and you have a busy day job, right? Maybe it's just something you only get to do on Sunday mornings, right? So it's Sunday morning. If you have a companion show like I'm talking about that helps you, something to listen to while you're doing it, you get up Sunday and it's not there. I'm not going to say you're crushed, but I will say that you're thrown off your pattern a little bit and you look for something else. Maybe you listen to some music, and then maybe you forget about the show, or it doesn't become as top of mind. So, does that mean you always have to keep producing your show new every week? Not your show necessarily, but it's really hard to develop a habit if that habit is not meeting people where they are when they're asking for it.
And I guess that does tie into what we're talking about, building this almost network. Like if if life throws you a curveball, which it inevitably does, if you have a close companion in podcasting where you say, look, can I just grab one of your, give me a great episode, I'll bang a quick intro on it and just let the listener know, and you're getting something out there. Therefore, the miniatures are getting painted still, and it's business as usual.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's how you become a habit. And I don't think you have to carry that load yourself. That's a lot for the independent creator. But I think, we can think about networks, not like big advertising networks and, DAI ads and stuff like that. It doesn't have to have that connotation. It can just be friends lifting each other up, and what they do for you, you do for them. Or again, maybe you do collaborate on a painting minis kind of feed. Or whatever your own, whatever your own thing is. But that's really what I'm talking about, because the audio prime consumes a lot of different things. And I think the key, and because I think they really do have fewer podcasts than the average podcast consumer, who is more dedicated to podcasts, perhaps, in general, then it's really important that whatever those shows are habit. That they are always there. And there's one small, I don't know how small it is, like lesson to learn from, Joe Rogan, let's say, is he's got new content all the time. And you can't replicate that as an independent creator, but you and some like-minded shows can replicate that as independent creators. And it's no small thing that there's generally something new for you to listen to from Joe Rogan when you're ready to do it.
Yeah. And I don't want to labor on this point because I've got a couple of things to ask you about back on the sort of report. But I think we underestimate sometimes our back catalogues as well. Like, there's great conversations you maybe recorded and they're evergreen, 5-6 years ago. And I know a lot of new subscribers will binge your back catalogue, but a lot don't. And just being able to kind of say, I did this chat, 4 years ago. It's a really good conversation. I'm going to play it again. And that's another way to just put something out there, isn't it? That's valuable.
Yeah. And I think, we can, and this is the work, I think, we can continually remix and repackage our back catalog. If you think about your back catalog, let's say you've been doing a show for a very long time and you've got 1,000 episodes in the can, right? Someone walks into that. It's kind of like walking into a clothing store that has one incredibly long rack of shirts and there's 1,000 shirts on it. And it's daunting. It's just one big long pile of everything. And you can sort of hope that search finds this or search finds that. And yes, have a metadata strategy and have search strategies and all that. But you can also, like the best retail stores do, continually refresh the store. What if we put these shows together on this aisle? What if we put a table in the middle that had local authors? What if we put a table over here that had, holiday or special event related things? And, think like a retailer. And that's the best way to get, I think, the value out of your back catalog. And hardly anybody's doing that, right? I don't know that I have vocalized this before, but I do think if you think a bit like a retailer, especially if you're a clothing store, if you're a big one like the Gap or Old Navy, you're selling the same stuff all the time, but how it's displayed changes, and what someone might see the next time they come in the store might change. And that's kind of the key to unlocking your back catalog, especially if your show is not topical what's in the news this week. I mean, that back catalog is essentially useless after a week. But if you're doing something that is kind of timeless and helpful and not so ephemeral and topical, then keep your shelves clean, keep changing the layout of your store.
One more thing to kind of ask you about there was just, I noticed a gravitation towards things like political talk, business, science, and less so on like entertainment-led formats, true crime, that's a new one, true crime, celebrity interviews. Does that suggest that niche expertise is a stronger retention strategy than like a broad entertainment strategy, if you like, for audio primes?
I think there's some truth to that. And again, keep in mind, the driver for all of that is that these people are voracious multi-platform, omni-channel consumers of media. So it's not that they're not consuming entertainment, a true crime. They have other sources for that. What this tells us is that for these people, these audio primes, the subset of things that they want to listen to is a little bit narrower. And it involves things that are maybe deeper topics, niche topics, things that you do want to spend time with absorbing a discussion, right? And to me, that's glorious. I think that paints a really rosy picture for the audio prime audience, because it does tend to reward things that honestly don't translate that well to video, right? I continually worry about, and this is a subject near and dear to your heart, about audio fiction and drama. And I continue to worry about, documentaries and things like that are impossible financially to reproduce from a video standpoint. But what this says is that these audio primes are carving out that special audio time for exactly that kind of content. I find that reassuring.
Obviously, I'll put a link in the show notes to the full report, and I would highly encourage the listener to go and check it out. Is there anything that we've not covered that you feel the listener might want to particularly look into or take going forward into their own content from this?
I think networking is one of the strongest things you can do as an independent creator, and that is not networking. I'm a terrible networker. Like in an event, like working a room, I'm really bad at it. This is why I partnered with Brian. Brian is extremely skilled at this. Unlike me, he likes people, Matthew. I don't like people.
He just walked past me all the time.
Honestly, it's not anything personal. It's just my brain's off in space somewhere. And I think the best thing you can do is to have strong connections, and strong connections with other podcasters. And I think when people think about networking, they think about walking into a crowded room and saying, this is what I do, and here's my elevator pitch. That's not going to work. But if you think about networking as, how can I get closer ties with people who also serve my audience so we can serve that audience better? And if you can do that, then I think you can leave deeper footprints. And if you can leave deeper footprints with people, then you can succeed on your own terms. Right? You can succeed on, you don't want to do video? Fine. Don't do video. Maybe someone in your network does a really good job with it. But start to put out more tentacles and start to put out deeper roots. I think deeper roots equals deeper footprints. And maybe that doesn't all come from this study, but it comes from a lot of things I've looked at and studied over the years. And it's one of the best ways I think the independent creator can help themselves.
Huge thanks to Tom there for the excellent insights, and I will of course have a link to the full report in the episode show notes. And remember, if you're ever looking for an all-in-one platform to record, edit and publish your podcast, then be sure to check out Alitu at alitu.com, that's alitu.com, and sign up for a free trial today. Alright, that is it for this episode of Podcraft. Thanks as always for listening, and we'll speak again on the next one.